Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Metal Coffee Conversations. My name's Karen Edwards, and our topic today is Built to Withstand. We're going to be doing a deep dive onto the weather, metal roofing, and I've got some great panelists joining me today for the conversation. First of all, thank you to the Metal Roofing Alliance for sponsoring this coffee conversation. Always excited to get good, important information and education out to the industry, and the Metal Roofing Alliance does a fantastic job at that. This is being recorded, so it will be available on Metal Coffee Shop within 1 to 2 days so that you can go back, watch it again, share it with anyone else that you think might need to hear this information. And the chat is open. So we would love for you to, make this a true conversation. Drop your name, where you're watching from. If you have questions throughout, just go ahead and use that chat and we'll answer right back and answer your questions in real time. Joining me today is Stefan Boyer. You are from MRHQ Metal Roofing Headquarters. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and your business and what you do.
Well, one of my strong suits is not brevity, but I'll try to keep it as concise. We've been in the metal roofing business. I say we, my brother and I have worked together for over 20 years, specifically specializing in metal roofing. We're in the Gulf Coast region and broadly the Deep South. My family's got 3 generations in the metal construction industry. My grandfather started doing metal siding and metal roofing in 1958, and I started when I was 20 years old, just a few years ago. And we specialize in metal exterior products. We're true believers in the superiority of metal. And we've always worked in Florida and the Alabama, Mississippi Gulf Coast. And so we've dealt with a lot of the subject matter we're going to talk about today. A lot of hurricanes have come through, and we've had thousands of roofs survive.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. Thanks for being here. Renee, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Renee Ramey. I'm the Executive Director of the Metal Roofing Alliance, and I've been in the industry for over 25, 26 years in different facets and believe in the product. So excited to share some of the information and benefits of metal roofing.
Yeah. Thanks for being here today. I'm going to stop sharing the screen because this is going to be a true conversation. And move you guys over here where I can see you in the chat. So we were going to have a third panelist here today, Edward from South Texas Metal Roofs. I think I got that name right. But unfortunately, just earlier this week, Edward had one of the worst hailstorms that he can remember in the area that he serves. And, needless to say, he is very busy taking care of his customers and answering phone calls and responding to requests for inspections. So it's funny that that happened, but, we still are going to have the conversation with Stefan and Renee. And let's talk a little bit about that weather. We are seeing more frequent the wildfires, the hurricanes, the severe storms. How is this changing the way that people are talking about resilience? And maybe, Stefan, you can get us started because you're out there talking to homeowners every day. What kind of
Yeah,
conversations are you having?
yeah, and there's a lot of layers to it. The resilience part, we always focus on a few things, our kind of core values, and it's kind of an industry wide, the beauty, durability, and energy efficiency of metal roofing. And the environmentally friendly could be a kind of in the place of energy efficiency. And that's really two things there. You've got the durability factor and you've got the environmental friendliness factor. And they go hand in hand. Durability, by the way, just to kind of say what that means to me, because it could mean different things. It's two distinct things. One, what kind of punch can a product take? So in a severe weather event like a hurricane or a hailstorm, how's it going to perform? And how well is it going to weather over time? And metal roofing really is by far the best option in both of those categories. And then the environmental friendliness, other than saving on energy, you reduce the waste that's coming out of your house. And anytime you have to re-roof, you typically have to remove shingles. those go into landfill, and more people are conscious of the fact that it's really bad for the environment to dump things constantly into landfills, and we're turning into kind of a disposable society. So we've had this kind of dynamic change where homeowners are paying a lot more attention to these environmental factors and these durability factors, partially just because of the ethics of it, and partially because it's just a better way to spend your money. Long term, it's going to save you a lot of money. So we have seen a tremendous growth in people that do that kind of research and are buying metal because of those exact reasons. And as the weather gets crazier, and it seems to be, metal seems to be a better option.
Yeah, yeah. Renee, I know that your job of the Metal Roofing Alliance is really to increase awareness, to educate. What kind of focus do you guys put on the extreme weather that just is happening more and more lately?
Yeah, it's interesting what speaks to homeowners on a broader overarching level. And I think weather and durability, as Stefan alluded to, are some of the biggest topics or points of interest. And so we've found ourselves, especially over the last few years, as it feels like, and I think the stats would back it, weather events are becoming more frequent. They're becoming a little bit more powerful, more impactful. And so with that, we do a lot of educating on a regional basis, depending on where you live in the US and Canada, as far as, what you should be considering when you're putting on a new roof or when you're building a house and putting on a roof for the region you live in, because yeah, those weather events do happen. I think we've all either experienced one or been touched by one in some form or fashion. And you couple that with, what the insurance companies and industry is going through and the challenges there, it's just really hard to argue against a metal roof because of the durability it provides.
Yeah, no,
It's
you
kind of
said,
sharing that information and making sure they have what they need to make the right choice.
yeah, you mentioned the insurance industry and, love it or hate it, we all need insurance. And Stefan, maybe you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing because there is a big push in Florida for metal roofs.
Absolutely. And not just Florida. Florida has always sort of led the way in the metal roofing industry. That's where we started in 1958 was Ocala, Florida. But Alabama, strangely enough, has been a bit of a leader in the fortified roofing program, which is an extension of the insurance industry. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into more detail about that in a little bit, but we've seen the insurance companies, your premium rates continually go up, up, up. And every time there's an extreme event like a hurricane, say after Hurricane Sally, the years after that, you're going to see somewhat of a skyrocket in insurance rates. And insurance companies are a lot more difficult to deal with for roof replacements these days. I think maybe by design, they kind of make it a painful process, especially for a homeowner trying to do it without a contractor.
Right.
So, the insurance companies, for obvious reasons, love metal roofs. They are going to pretty much eliminate the possibility of ever having a claim, at least on your roof, which is like 98% of homeowner claims.
Wow.
So, you've got the insurance company that benefits from it. And as a result of that, your homeowners are going to be benefiting because if there's less claims, people's rates will go down. And as much as people hate to see their premiums go up, what really hurts the pocket is when you have a claim on the Gulf Coast, instead of what used to be maybe $1,000 deductible, you pay your $1,000, you get a new roof. Now they're making claims, the deductibles for any named storms and sometimes even hail, a percentage of the home value,
Oh, wow.
which totally changed the game. And it went from something where you've got this flat $1,000 to now you've got a number that is one going to increase as your home value increases. And the insurance companies make it to where if you want your premium not to skyrocket, you're going to have a 5% deductible. And then you start
Wow.
getting into real money. I mean, especially if you take what might be a $300,000 house a couple of hours from the beach, you put it, within 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes of the coast, they might buy you that at 700,000. And, I've seen a lot of customers with 20, 30, $40,000 deductibles. And
Wow.
it ends up being about the same amount that your asphalt shingles are going to cost.
Yeah.
So, and the insurance companies do that to protect themselves because they don't want to have to pay out if they can help it. So, the long answer to that, but we've seen a lot of folks paying more attention to it in the last few years, especially post Hurricane Sally. And people are a lot more conscious of it because so many folks did have to pay those $20,000 deductibles.
Wow. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the performance of metal, and the first being the wind resistance. And I think when we were talking the other day, last week, you made a comment, Stefan, that said you've never had a roof blow off on the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's somewhat shocking even to me. And I started in 2003. So that was really the beginning of 2004. So in my first year working on the Gulf Coast is when Hurricane Ivan hit. And our territory is from the Florida Panhandle to Louisiana. So within the next year, we had Hurricane Katrina and several Rita and several others in that 3 4 year period. It was crazy. So we have seen metal roofs, if they're installed properly, just perform flawlessly. The only times we ever see a metal roof fail is if it's not installed correctly. Maybe you install a system that's really designed to be done that way in some other part of the country where you're not going to get hit by hurricanes. But there's a laundry list of benefits. I would say in our area, the wind resistance is right near the top, and it's become even more valuable. And I don't want to sound like I'm bashing asphalt shingles as an industry. It's a reasonable way to roof a house, I suppose, as long as they're honest about what you're getting. But they have changed the shingles. The composition of the asphalt shingle is not what it was 30 years ago. There's a lot less petroleum being used in the shingle. And that petroleum is the bonding agent that holds the shingles together. It's what makes the two layers stick and not flip up. And with time, people think that time is what ages a shingle. It's not exactly. What really ages a shingle is the amount of heat that you're getting in the area, the amount of rainfall, and then, of course, wind. And as in hotter climates, as the shingle ages, the amount of petroleum that's in there that's holding it together reduces. It leaches out of the product. So, a brand new asphalt shingle might do well, might go through a category 1 hurricane. But when it gets, 8, 10, 12 years old, there's not enough oil to hold it together, and a tropical storm will start blowing shingles off. So people are noticing that. It takes time for people to catch on, but the more and more you see that, the more and more people are gravitating towards metal for obvious reasons. It's not going to get any weaker with time, and it starts off really, really strong.
Yeah, and I mean, wind is a problem throughout the country. I'm in Pennsylvania. We just had 45, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts yesterday. And yeah, I was thinking about my roof up there flapping. But, so I know your service area is the Gulf Coast. And so we're talking a lot about hurricanes, but we have wind across the country. Any kind of strong thunderstorm is going to have gusts and all that. So I think it's important to consider that and that strength that metal delivers. But let's talk about other elements of metal. Renee, maybe you could touch on hail and fire resistance.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm actually located in the Pacific Northwest. That's where I live full time. So wildfires are near and dear to us out on specifically the West Coast, and hail as well. And yeah, so along the same lines as what Stefan shared with the wind uplift and the high winds, we've got a wonderful product to offer to homeowners for wildfire resistance. The way, if as he said, and I agree, it's all about the install and the product being used. And if you install the right roof the correct way, you're going to save a home potentially from flying embers that, I mean, we've got on record, they can fly a mile plus from the source of the fire. And, having a well installed, correctly installed metal roof on your home gives you that tightness of, the roof itself, which is kind of your main defense when it comes to fire, right? Everything lands on something. The roof is the largest area for embers to land on or get sucked up into. And so, yeah, wildfire is huge out here. There's a big push in California right now for obvious reasons with the wildfires that happened not so long ago. And then you add hail in there. Hail is not obviously specific just to the Northwest or the West Coast. You know, as we're talking about Edward missing the presentation this morning,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
and so, you know, it's amazing to me that more and more people don't see that benefit from the hail side as well. And I can just give a quick little personal story. I have a home in an area of Oregon State that never, hardly ever gets wildfires. Yes, hail. No, we got a hailstorm and it wreaked havoc on the asphalt roof that was on. I live in a townhome, so there's 4 townhomes on our building. And going back to the insurance conversation, we ended up we got dropped by our insurance company. We had to pick up another insurance company, and our deductible is $50,000 per incident. So if that roof goes again, and Stefan, it hit my ears because it's personal to me. If we have a hailstorm next week and our roof is damaged again, we're out of pocket almost the price of what a brand new metal roof, well installed quality metal roof would have cost to put on the townhomes. But I'm in an HOA situation, getting HOAs to hear that and see that is very frustrating. But yeah, so you know, hail and wind and fires, it just provides metal roofing, quality metal roofing installed correctly, just provides that layer of protection that no other product can really touch.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and we're gonna talk HOAs in a little bit, but Stefan, you had shared that about your father being a firefighter and
Yeah.
what he had to say about metal roofs.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting connection. In my family, you pretty much get two choices of a career. You can either be a firefighter or get in the metal roofing business. My father was a firefighter, and my brother and I got into the metal roofing business. My uncles were in the metal roofing business, and my two cousins are firefighters. So, go figure. But beyond firefighting, firemen always have second jobs. And my dad's other job for about 20 some odd years was fire investigation. He was what they call CFI, CFEI, Certified Fire and Explosives Investigator, and worked for insurance companies, basically to figure out if it was arson or what caused
Right.
the fire. And he told me way back then, and I remember so many house fires that start on the roof and people don't think of, and it obviously anywhere you get, where wildfires are prevalent, it's a no-brainer. But it doesn't have to be a wildfire. It could be a neighbor just burning a brush pile, or it could be, somebody shooting fireworks off on the 4th of July or New Year's or lightning. My next door neighbor a few years ago, their house got struck by lightning. It was one of these weird storms where, it came on really fast. And even though it was raining, it still caught the shingles on fire. Of course, you got a petroleum product that's been drying out in the sun. It doesn't take much to ignite an asphalt shingle.
Yeah.
And, as great as the wind resistance is, depending on where you are, the fire resistance may be even better. And the insurance discounts might even be better. I don't know. But fire resistance is great. Your house could possibly burn up, but it'll never burn down. From the top down, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So are you seeing, building codes and testing standards evolve? Are you seeing products evolve as the codes change or just maybe methods, installation methods?
Yeah, absolutely. And in metal, and Renee can probably speak on this more. I think it's part of the what the MRA is always working on. Metal has always been this kind of loose confederation of companies without much that really standardizes. It's not like, the asphalt industry sometime 30, 40 years ago got together and they kind of made a standard where all of the products fit within this certain box. In metal, there's a lot of different ways to put them together. The install techniques can be vastly different. The quality of the material can be vastly different. So because of that, the performance can be vastly different. But if you're using the best techniques, you're probably going to be doing things based on what like a Florida building code requirement would be. And that's a great place to start. But, you know, in most states, they're going to have kind of a minimum standard that they require. I don't recommend ever performing to the minimum standard. I think that's just
Yeah.
kind of a bad approach. So, you know, we take whatever our area that we cover, which is pretty large footprint, we take the most rigorous standards and we just apply that across the board to everything. And if you do that, it's gonna work great. But now you get a lot of the local codes are one aspect, and the states might have their own, and then the insurance companies have programs where they could have another set of requirements. So, you know, it's smart to do your homework. Always make sure you know what the requirements are in your area. Speak to local building departments and, you know, fortified, IBHS fortifieds, obviously. That's kind of the gold standard on certifications. So my recommendation is to go through IBHS. And if you're doing what they say, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, so you mentioned the fortified program through IBHS. It's kind of taking the basic installation requirements and beefing them up a little bit, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
and
there's a lot of
contractors must be
engineering that goes into it. So
yeah, and contractors have to be qualified to install that, correct?
that's right. And that's kind of it's a new part of it. It was already a smart idea to hire a qualified, certified contractor, but now you have to do it as of November 1st. We can get into that if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, the program for fortified program's been around a long time. Everybody thinks it's kind of this new phenomenon, kind of like everybody thinks metal roofing is some new phenomenon. It's been around. I think it goes back to around in some iteration around 2009, 2010. But you know the version of fortified that we have now has been around since 2012. That's when we started installing fortified roofs, and it's, you know, now it's turned into something that it began as, you know, locally in Alabama, and now I think we're in 34 states with fortified.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's expanding all the time. Now states have grant programs where you can get money if you go with a fortified roof. And I don't know, I started meandering a little there. What was the original question?
Well, just that contractors have to get certified by IBHS in order to qualify to install this fortified roof, which insurance companies look kindly on, right? With the premium discounts
Oh
potentially.
yeah, insurance companies love it. In fact, it's actually an outgrowth of the insurance industry. So IBHS is the Institute for Building and Home Safety, Business and Home Safety, and they're sort of like what the auto industry had when they created this trade organization. It's, you know, basically engineers that determine, hey, these are the best practices for keeping people safe in a car, and then the manufacturers have to all go by that, like making sure there's seat belts in cars. What seemed like a no-brainer today, it wasn't a
Yeah.
thing, you know, not that long ago. And that's where we're trying to get roofing into, where if you go by these guidelines, we know the roof's going to perform. We know there's going to be less claims. And ultimately, if there are less claims, everybody saves money. You know, this isn't a zero-sum game. It's truly symbiotic. The insurance companies, sometimes they don't do themselves favors with the way that they act, and they've damaged their reputations a little bit. But on this one, they really are doing a good thing, and they're doing it for the benefit of everyone. Now, the standards are, I don't want to scare anybody away from it, but they can be a little complex and confusing to start with. Um, but there's a solution to that where the roofer doesn't have to like learn how to do the engineering aspect. I've gone through classes and I can kind of do it, but they use calculations where there's not numbers or letters. They got symbols, and I mean, I don't even. It's rough for a roofer. So they've created, you know, another part of the fortifieds, the professional side, where you've got these certified evaluators. A lot of them are engineers or building inspectors, and they can come in on the front end and say, all right, here's the punch list of what you need to do on this specific job so that you meet all of the qualifications. And you know, you've got to do it while you're installing the roof, and it's all has to be documented. And I think we'll probably talk about that a little too. That's very important. But
Yeah.
you better do what they say because you kind of get one bite at the apple. you don't want to take that roof off and, re-nail the decking again because you put the nails every 5 inches instead of every 4 or something like that. So hire a good evaluator. And that's really an important part, a good evaluator. There are a lot of evaluators now, and I'm sure some that are willing to operate in the gray area, maybe fudge things. But if you get caught doing that, it's a real big problem. You don't want to do that. And at the beginning of the program, it was kind of the Wild West. Thankfully, now there's all these apps like, to promote anything in particular, like Company Cam is what we use, and that documents everything with a timestamp, geo stamp on the exact location, and you have to have multiple photos of everything that you do, and then you share those, and it's kind of inspect what you expect is kind of
Yeah.
the
D-
philosophy on it.
document, 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 right? It's all about that. And it is so
That's
easy to
right.
do with phones and with
Yeah, there's no
timestamps
excuse.
and yeah, yeah. No,
If they say you need 4, take 40. Yeah, who knows? You might get one that gets blurry, or
Yeah,
just take more
yeah.
than you need. They don't. Not like you got to go to go get the film developed or something.
I remember those days. So let's talk about, the manufacturers and the technologies and coatings that they're using to enhance the performance of metal roofs. I think you said yourself, Stefan, it starts with the finish. And Renee, maybe, talk about the importance of choosing a manufacturer that's involved in the MRA.
Yeah, we are a nonprofit. We are all coming together under the umbrella of MRA for the benefit of the industry to make sure that homeowners and industry alike have the accurate information, have the right information to make educated decisions. So you're right, it starts with your suppliers, are you using the right substrates, metal substrates? Are you using the right coatings or paint systems? From there, are the manufacturers manufacturing it correctly? Is it meeting, the requirements, the minimum requirements as agreed upon within this industry, right? For going onto a roof. And then from there, you got each individual manufacturer. And that's where, to answer your question, the manufacturers that are members of MRA, for the most part, are all very engaged in growing this industry, right? This is their livelihood, this is their passion. And so, to Stefan's point earlier, crap in, crap out, that's not what we're about. We're about quality product going on in a quality install manner, because what we don't want are, those poorly installed or those shoddy, a light kiss of paint on a subferior metal, panel that the paint wears off or fades or looks horrible, in a couple years. None of that does our industry any good. And so, yeah, the MRA members specifically, well, all of them, but talking about manufacturers, they join, they participate, and we all work together to promote that quality message. And they're always looking for ways to improve. Just to kind of add to that, we've got several manufacturers and even paint companies, steel companies, that are working on, strengthening the substrate, coming up with a better coating that might perform better in certain climates, or etc. Yeah, how do they roll form it a little differently so that it meets the standards and lives up to the rigorous weather it's going to be in. Yeah. So it's a constant part of this business for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So you do a lot of coastal work, right? So you've got to look for finishes that can stand up to that salt air, right?
Absolutely. And the quote, it starts with the finish. I don't want or deserve credit for that one. That's one of the pioneers of our industry, Donald Miller, who started Classic Metal Roofs. Now, Todd Miller's father. That's a saying he's known for, and it's probably truer today than it was 40 years ago when he said it. So,
Yeah.
and it's definitely true on the Gulf Coast, or really anywhere that you're in a harsh climate. And it's not really limited to roofing. A lot of these technologies span multiple industries, and I'll probably get some things wrong here, so whatever, fact check me, internet. But the kind of finish, which that's a trade name for a PVDF coating, and that's always been the gold standard for metal roof coatings. But it's used outside of the metal roofing industry in a lot of instances. One being coating terminals for lithium batteries, which is always this weird niche industry. And around 2020, all of a sudden, we started seeing a skyrocket in the cost of Kynar coatings. And I was like, what in the world is going on? I knew that there was a supply chain issue, obviously,
Sure.
around COVID, but the explanation was, well, there's a federal mandate on the production of electric vehicles. So car companies are having to produce like, I don't know, 100, maybe 1,000 times more electric vehicles than they were, a few years earlier. And they have these big electric batteries and they're coating it with this PVDF coating. And because there was a mandate and then it was coupled with this supply chain crisis, the government then stepped in. Instead of getting rid of the mandate, they doubled down and said, okay, now y'all have to sell to the car company or the battery companies for automotive before everybody else. And
Wow.
the resin started to make the coating started getting allocated. And it was, you would never think that electric vehicles could affect the price of a metal roof, but there we were.
Wow.
But it's a statement on how great that coating is at protecting against corrosion, because you'll be hard pressed to find anything, a harsher climate than a battery terminal.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, but metal roofing has always been the biggest user of that finish. And there are other technologies that have come along. You've got the frost and crinkle finishes, which are really popular. We love them. We started using them in around 2017. I think that's when they first got to the United States. And it gives you more of like a textured, matte finished. Hard to describe. You just have to really see it, but it's a beautiful, beautiful coating. It performs wonderfully. It kind of fits in between your standard SMP paint, which is the standard kind of just run of the mill painted metal, and technically frost slash crinkle is an SMP, but it's better than a normal SMP, and it's
Right.
it's really beautiful, and it's made by Sherwin-Williams and Axo Nobel, and but it's a technology that's been in Europe for, I don't know, a couple of decades, and we're just now getting it. So the technologies are improving, and then we're also getting other technologies kind of become available in our market. And as long as you have a paint finish that's going to stay coated to that metal, your metal is protected. It's really a big cost point though, and I want to take a little bit of a sidebar and talk to roofers a little bit that sometimes we like to impose our value systems on our customers, and that's not a smart thing to do. Like, you might think, well, I wouldn't pay that much for that coating. I can, for $10,000 less, you can get a metal roof that's going to stay dry. But that's not how people make decisions. Buyers, some make a price-based decision, but they're the minority. People make their buying decisions based on a lot of different factors. But really, if it's a person that's making a decision based solely on price, it's probably not a metal roofing customer to start with.
Yeah.
They're probably shopping for the wrong product. They should get an asphalt shingle. It will cost less and very consistently do what it's going to do. So people will, they like features and benefits, and there are so many great benefits to a high-end coating. It's very rare for us to explain to customers, and we do believe in a consultative approach and educating people. And when you educate people on what they're getting and, like, the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what's going to happen, say 80% of people choose to go with the more expensive option. So yeah, don't avoid selling a roof with a high-end coating just because it costs more money. We'll look back 10 years from now and laugh at how cheap things are right now.
So
And
true.
we think it's crazy, like, I can't believe it cost that. I sold my first Kynar coated metal shingle in 2004. And I went by the house the other day. It's in Fairhope, Alabama, and the roof looks as good as the day it was installed. And I remember the homeowner about fell out of his chair at how much it cost. The next door neighbor basically, like, nearly accosted me for selling it to the guy because he was 80 years old and he
Yeah.
was spending more money, like 2.5 times what the asphalt was at that time. He's like, oh, he doesn't need to be spending that much money. And then 10 years later, the neighbor calls us to get a quote on the same roof after his shingles blew off again. And, we gave him that price and he about fell out of his chair at how much more the metal shingle was 10 years later. And now we look back 20 years ago and it's like half of what the guy's deductible is now. And
Wow.
his roof is still basically new. You
Yeah.
know, you got to be careful not to be a prisoner of the moment when it comes to cost and price.
Yeah, definitely. I
Got
mean,
to look big
you're
picture.
educating them. You're educating them on what they're investing in and what it's going to do for them, and that's huge. And that's not something that contractors, when you decide you're going to be a contractor, it's not always to educate people, but that's a big part of the job.
Yeah, yeah. The only problem is if the next door neighbor wants to buy a roof and they see the guy's 20-year-old roof, like, oh, that's the best thing I've ever seen. I want that. And how much did you pay for it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then he gets his price now and throws
Yeah.
you out of his house.
All
But
right.
it'll
So
be the
I will.
same thing 20 years from now. We'll look back and laugh out loud. Like, I can't believe how cheap it was in 2025.
Right. Why didn't I do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we touch on the topic of HOAs. Renee, you mentioned that you're in an HOA situation. So were they like metal's not an option?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of education that needs to be aimed at the HOAs within the US and Canada as well. And I actually am part of two HOAs, president of one and secretary of the other now. And in that scenario I shared earlier where they said you couldn't install a metal roof, unfortunately, we replaced the roofs with, a version of an asphalt, but it so upset me, like so frustrated me that I ran and got on the architectural review committee, and metal roofing is now allowed in that HOA. So I think it's all to say that it's just a lot of misinformation. I'll never forget sitting in a room with our HOA management company, and the manager of our HOA was like, well, I think it comes in 12 colors now. And you're just like, what? Like it can come in there. I worked at a coil coating facility. There was 140 whites. It can come in any color you want, it's just like, and it only comes at, like the barn roofs, so it's just a lot of misinformation. And as I walked through that process personally, it just validated what we've been trying to do as a whole to all HOAs, and all HOA leaders throughout the US and Canada. Again, it's just that, it can look like any other roofing material out there. It can be any color you want it, honestly, and it goes with any architectural style of home. There's this mentality that it only looks good on barn dominiums or country crafts. No, no, it looks great on all different kinds of homes. So it's almost become, in my experience, a visual journey where you've got to present, well, okay, this is a metal roof, and look at this architectural style, that's a metal roof. And so the more that I did that personally, but certainly the more we share that information out to the HOAs or the people that lead those HOAs, I think we're finding that that's helping with the issue of HOA constraints. I know Florida, going back to Florida leading the pack, they've just recently been in the news for some rulings that they've made down there that prevent HOAs from dictating that you can't have a metal roof. And mainly because of the performance issues, the longevity, the durability, all those things we've been talking about. It's not fair to the homeowner to deny them the ability to put on, an extremely strong, durable roof.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Stefan, what's your experience been in working with HOAs?
Yeah. Well said, Renee.
Mhm.
I've got a lot of experience with it, and like everything, it's changed over time. Thankfully, as metal has grown in residential market share and kind of been thrust into the forefront of high-end residential construction, thanks in large part to the MRA, people are more receptive to it than ever before, and I suspect that will continue to progress. But still, you get people that just are uneducated on it, and that's most people are uneducated on it.
Mhm.
I do presentations. We talk to HOAs, we talk to real estate offices, and we do lunch and learns for engineering companies and architects, and so many professionals that you would think would know everything don't even know that metal shingles exist.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not that they're unfamiliar with it. A lot of them don't even know it's a thing.
Yeah.
And there's people that pass by metal shingles every single day and don't
Nope.
give it a second look. They don't even know what they're seeing.
Yeah.
You might say, oh, that looks special. Like the roof behind Renee, it's a beautiful Edco
Yep.
enhanced metal slate, the Aeroline slate blend, one of my favorites. You know, you might drive by that and be like, oh, wow, that's an awesome roof. But you don't think, oh, that's a metal roof. So in Florida, again, it was kind of one of the leaders. A lot of HOAs around the country have these covenants put into their bylaws that say no metal roofs. And a
Mhm.
lot of them don't actually say no metal roofs. A lot of them say the roofs must be of an architectural nature that blends with the other roofs in the neighborhood, something along those lines.
Mhm.
And people read into that no metal roofs. It's got to be just like all the other roofs. But even the ones that forbid metal, they can change those. And
Yep.
when they wrote those bylaws, they had in mind that every metal roof, like you're saying, is a red barn roof or a green roof, and it's going to fade. And you know, the
Corrugated.
red roof's going to be pink in 10 years, and it's going to
Yeah.
look awful. And that's not, obviously not the case. Even a standing seam, or in some cases like an agricultural panel, if you get the right color, it blends right in. You don't even notice it. And the more and more people see them as it's grown in popularity, the more comfortable. This is sort of just something the human mind does. The more you see it, the more you like it,
Yep.
Yeah.
because you develop a level of comfort with it, and it doesn't shock the senses when you see it. But in Florida, 10, 15 years ago, we were getting HOAs to start changing their bylaws. And usually that was because somebody like a president of an HOA wanted to have a metal roof, and they're like, all right, I'll get this fixed. But now we're trying to be more proactive with it, and go directly to them and show them, hey, these are the options. And I can
Yeah.
tell you not just one story, but more than I can count, where we have a customer that wants, you can name any metal shingle company, like a Decra shingle is one of the top stone coated manufacturers, or BTR
Mhm.
systems. They make a steel roof that has like a stone finish, has a granule texture, just like your asphalt roof does. You can literally have it laying on a table and rub your hand on it, and you don't think it's a metal roof. And then people, it perfectly blends with the neighborhood. Well, they'll want to put that on, they'll buy it, maybe even put a deposit down, but they have to get it approved through the HOA. And I always try to tell them, look, don't just call your HOA president and say, hey, I'm thinking about putting this metal shingle on, because you can be as detailed as you want. You can tell them, write him a book explaining exactly what it is and what it looks like. Now, all they're going to hear is metal roof, no. And so time and time again, people say, oh, I told them and they won't approve it. They're saying no metal roofs. And like, well, I told you go see them and actually show them the sample when you're asking if you can do it. And 100% of the time, when they finally go and see the person in person, and they're like, hey, here's what we're thinking about putting on. Can we get this approved? They say, oh, well, I thought you were talking about a metal roof. Yeah, you can use that. That's great. What is that? I'd like to have one.
Yeah.
And so you got to approach it the proper way. And hopefully we can, through organizations like the Metal Roofing Alliance, maybe start getting more aggressive and teaching roofing companies around the country to approach HOAs and do these presentations. And I
Yep.
think if we enlist the metal roofing army out there, we could really change things quickly.
You just rebranded the MRA to the Metal
Metal
Roofing
roofing.
Army, right?
That's that. Yeah, I didn't do that on purpose, but
That
y'all can
works,
have
right?
that one. I won't TM it.
I like it. So Renee, maybe you could touch on, for contractors that might be watching, some of
Mhm.
the reasons why they might want to consider becoming a member of MRA.
Yeah, well, I think Stefan's hit on several. We're out there, we're promoting quality. So I think as first and foremost, being a member of the MRA is just kind of that third party validation, that, seal of approval, if you will, to a homeowner that they're getting a quality installer who's going to be using quality products, that knows what they're doing. You can't just join the MRA willy-nilly. You have to be sponsored. There's, some minor hoops, but things that you need to present or prove to us that you know what you're doing, you're using the right products, you know how to install it correctly. So that's first and foremost. But beyond that, we are constantly, I mean, on the daily, we're generating information with a homeowner slant or focus, and it's dispelling myths, it's presenting truths about metal roofing, you know, sharing detail about the benefits. It's, you know, doing testimonials or videos that of homeowners who've installed it and they love it. And Stefan's been involved in a few of those projects that we've done as well with other vendors and media companies where we, you know, we do an install of a metal roof and we record the whole thing, and we get that testimony of how it performed. And we've even gone back to some of those homeowners years later and done that have met, you know, their homes have made it through a hurricane. Okay, now what do you think of metal roofing? You know, and the story's still the same. And so anyway, taking it back to a membership benefit, all of that's available. I mean, we don't gatekeep anything, we don't charge anything. All of that's available for our members to use, to promote, to educate, to, you know, get a homeowner into the know on metal roofing. We do also offer a find a professional program. So just to be clear, we are not a lead generating entity. We are not a Angie's List or Angie's or whatever they're called. We are a nonprofit aimed at driving awareness about metal roofing to homeowners. But obviously everything we do hopefully brings a homeowner back to our website. And so on our website, we do have the ability, once we've gotten them educated, once they're ready to kind of maybe dive in a bit deeper, they have the ability to go in and enter their information, specifically works off their zip code, and it provides their contact information to local MRA members in their area. And it gives the homeowner real time on their screen information for those companies that are members of MRA as well. So it's kind of works both ways to get a homeowner in touch with a local resource that is an MRA member that can answer their questions, you know, come meet with them in person if that's what they need, show them some examples in the local area of projects they've done. So there's a lot there, you know, and then the more boring stuff of, you know, we participate in a lot of industry focused efforts, from training and codes and standards to product development, you name it. So we're just here representing quality metal roofing. And if you want to be a part of that and be known for that, we're here to help.
Yeah. Wow. Very well said. So
Here.
yeah, we're getting close to the end of our time. And I just want to touch on, where do you see the future going for metal roofs?
Talking to me.
Well, yeah,
I get
yeah.
excited about that. No, you know, we've grown the market share for metal roofing from, it was around 3% back in 98 to sitting between 17, 18% in 2024, 2025. So it's been that might not seem impressive, but when you realize that every 1% growth in market share equals about 100,000 tons of steel, and I forget how many hundreds of thousands of gallons of paint, like it's a big impact to our industry. So it's important, you know, it's important to the industry that we continue this effort. And we are second, metal roofing is the second most popular roofing choice after asphalt in the residential area. And when you look at, you know, asphalt has 70 some percent and metal has 20 or just under 20%. That's a lot of plus, right? That's a lot of goal out there, a lot of roofs to gain. So I share that only to say that, you know, we've come so far, but there's still so much further we can go. And I believe as we continue to educate, promote, and get homeowners aware of metal roofing, I believe we'll continue to see that market share go up. So
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity for contractors who maybe aren't offering metal roofs currently to get into that. Stefan, do you have any advice for a contractor that wants to start doing metal roofs?
Absolutely. And to add a little bit to what Renee just said, although she said it perfectly, the she was being a little bit modest. The growth of metal roofing has a tremendous amount to do with the Metal Roofing Alliance, which I became a member in 2007. One of the best decisions I ever made. Whatever you pay for it, I can't tell you what it is offhand, but one job will pay for that, you know, 3 times over, and they send us a lot of business. I mean, it's just a great organization. But the growth residential market share growth, it's impressive to grow from 3 to 18%. I'm no math wizard, but I think that's about 15 percentage points. But that's a 600% growth. That's insane. And we're talking about something that every home has. Not every home doesn't have a metal roof, but every home has a roof.
Yep.
And when you pick up 600% growth in that industry in that short of a period of time, which is relatively short, that is really doing something. This isn't hot tubs growing 600%. Roof of a segment of roofing,
Yeah.
and that hasn't gone unnoticed. Obviously, homeowners are noticing it, roofers are noticing it, and a lot of people do flock to metal roofing because of that. And the other industries have noticed, and specifically asphalt, which whatever it is, what it is, they like to put out some information periodically about metal roofing that, a little bit of propaganda that they've always tried to say negative things about metal roofing with none of it rooted in truth. There is no negative to metal roofing. So if anytime you get some information, if you're hearing something negative about a metal roof, odds are that is being put out by somebody that's coming from another industry. And maybe there's always a sliver of truth. The caveat is if it's not done correctly, yeah, that's possible. You could have that problem, whatever the problem is. But if you do a metal roof correctly and you use an MRA manufacturer, you go by the best standards, there are no negatives. The only potential negative could be, if you wanted to find one, would be that the initial price is higher. But
Yeah.
your more savvy buyers don't look at price as much as they look at cost. And that sounds like semantics, like a politician or something, but it's the truth. There is a difference in pricing cost always. Cost is what really matters, and a metal roof actually costs less money. You go through one roofing cycle when you start factoring in energy savings, insurance savings, increased home value, and then you look at, all right, I bought one roof now, and then 10 years from now it's doubled. They've been doubling. Asphalt has every 10 years. You're going to spend the money for the metal roof, 1.5 to 2 times over. So over time, it literally pays for itself. The only negative, potentially price, and then I guess you could say one other potential negative is they're a little more complex, a little less user friendly. You can't just, with shingles, they put the instructions on the wrapper. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not much to it. We actually have install manuals, and you have to actually read them. And, there's installation training schools, and, you should take the time to learn how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
If you don't, you'll have problems. But outside of that, there's,
Yeah.
loads and loads of benefits to metal. And thankfully, the Metal Roofing Alliance is a big part of that. And now that I can get off my soapbox there, what was you asking?
Any advice for someone that wants to add metal to their business? Maybe they've been doing asphalt for years and they at least want to give homeowners that option, just to get started in
Yeah.
2 minutes or less.
One, I would say hire a crew, recruit and hire a crew that specializes in metal if possible. It's difficult to make that jump back and forth from asphalt to metal. It's a different animal. It's different tools. Everything about it is different. It's an an analogy would be like, all right, somebody does brick or vinyl siding. That's not the same trade. So
Yeah.
hire a specialist when possible. Go through manufacturer certifications, read installation manuals, make sure you're charging enough money where you can actually afford to do the roof correctly. You can get away with cutting corners in some industries. You cannot get away with cutting corners in metal roofing. The chickens will come home to roost, and you'll get bitten in the rear down the road. So that, and don't be afraid to actually sell something. I mean, we're not going in and doing some dog and pony show and driving homeowners crazy, but you can't be in the metal roofing business and just quote stuff over the telephone, use Eagle View and leave a price in a mailbox. There's too many variables. There's too many questions that will get uncovered throughout the conversation with a homeowner. And you really owe them the time to do a true consultation on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 100%. Very well said. Well, we are out of time. So
No.
I am going to say once again, thank you to the Metal Roofing Alliance for being here and sponsoring this conversation. And for more information about metal roofing and the Metal Roofing Alliance, it's metalroofing.com, right, Renee?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, really easy to remember, metalroofing.com. And MRA also has a directory on Metal Coffee Shop. You can find lots of information about metal roofing there as well. Thank you, everyone out there, for attending this Coffee Conversations. As I mentioned, this is going to be available on demand on our website within 1 to 2 days. So you could share this. And, good luck out there with your metal roofing efforts, and reach out to us at Metal Coffee Shop or Renee at the Metal Roofing Alliance if you have any questions. Thank you both for being here.
Whatever you do, don't go to mrhqroofs.com. Don't go there.
Go there.
All
Shameless
right.
plug.
See you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Bye bye.